So welcome back to DecoyNoise and another episode of Decoy Court, where we're judging online strangers over on r/ProRevenge, and a story talking about if you pass me for a manager promotion and hire your useless credit-stealing friend, I'll destroy your career. So as always, we read the story in its entirety, then we take it over to the Decoy Court where I give you my judgment onto these people online that I have no business judging them online, but then we read some top comments and the controversial comments and your comments down below. But let's go ahead and get to the story right now. So OP wrote, long story, too long didn't read at the bottom. So this is not my story. Got permission to post this from the ProRevenger himself. But due to the nature of events, I don't mind my account being made into a sacrificial lamb if it got back to the people involved, as my account is essentially expendable. So to the story. Dave, not a real name, has been working for an IT programming company for just over 9 years, getting a good rep as a hard worker, and all his colleagues knew him and could trust him to be a big help in times of trouble, like during a big difficult projects for major clients. Dave's manager, John, was planning to retire and thought Dave would be a good replacement to put his name forward as a recommendation, and started showing him the ropes of a potential new job just to give him a glimpse of what he may be asked to undertake. A month later, John puts his notice of retirement and Dave's department manager, Michael, starts the interview process. Some character info. Whilst John was a good manager, very people-friendly, Michael was not. All Michael cared about was his numbers and reports. He didn't even know most of his staff, nor did he have very much interaction with them. Back to the story. Michael had started the interviews to fill John's position, Dave being one of the interviewees, and Dave thought the interview went very well. A few nervous months later, Michael announces the new manager. It's an outside of employment, not an internal promotion. Dave was disappointed but brushed it off as there is always someone better for the job, but in less than a week he realized how wrong he was. The new manager, Darren, was below useless. He didn't know how to spell computer program, let alone write one. Turns out he was one of his old friends with Michael, and Michael helped him fabricate his resume to get the job. The news quickly spread to all the programmers, but there was nothing they could do, as Michael was a person all complaints had to go through, and he buried all of them. So no one above Michael knew Darren's incompetency. Darren from day one had been pushing all of his work to others, and then claiming credit for the work they had done, getting bonuses for completed work that he did not deserve. Darren spent his days watching movies, napping, playing games, and occasionally pretending to be a manager when the need arose, but never wrote a single line of code. After 3 months of this, the extra workload was starting to affect Dave, and the others talking to Michael would do nothing, so Dave devised a plan to sort it all out. Time for the ProRevenge. Dave had talked to all the other programmers and agreed next time Darren pushed a major product onto them to purposely sabotage the work, not in a big way, just enough to cause some bugs and glitches that will really light a fire under Michael and Darren. It took about another month, but a really big project came in. Immediately Darren started pushing his work onto others and stealing credit so the plan was put into action. It was easy to accomplish, especially as Darren had no clue about coding and Michael didn't care as long as the project was done in good time. The project was done, saved and sent to the client, with almost all the major work credit being stolen by Darren. It took less than 2 days for the client to call back complaining about how the new program has damaged his systems and was wreaking havoc on his company. The client wanted it fixing and a full refund. The bosses were pissed at Michael. Michael tried to shift the blame onto Darren, and Darren tried to shift the blame onto the programmers. Dave and the programmers just pointed out the program wasn't their project and denied any involvement in its development, which brought the attention back to Darren. The fallout. With the bosses coming down on Darren for what happened, he confessed he lied on his resume, and he ratted out Michael about how he helped him fabricate it. Dave and other programmers denied any wrongdoing, just stating that Darren must have damaged the program somehow. Michael and Darren were promptly fired and replaced. Dave and the rest fixed the errors that Darren had created, and the client was happy. In the end, Dave didn't get the promotion but left the company a year later for a better job. Too long didn't read. The department manager hires useless credit-stealing friends as managers, programmers sabotage a big project, and both managers get a full blame and are fired. So as always, in a very long story, gotta rush the case over to Decoy Court. Was this was the crime closely related to the punishment? There's gotta be a better way to put it, but there's so much information in this story. I gotta go ahead and say that, in these situations, who are you really punishing? Yes, you're getting Darren. Yes, you're getting Michael because you feel that you were slighted and not getting the job that you thought you deserved. But oftentimes with management positions, there can be other things involved other than just, hey, I'm really good at the job. They talk about the Peter principle, where people get promoted to their level of incompetence. So if you're, like I say this all the time, if you're working at a burger joint, you're really good at mopping the floors, you get promoted to do the fries. You're really good at doing the fries, you can take orders. If you're really good at taking orders, you can go and cook the burgers. But if you're terrible at cooking burgers, you're never going to make the position beyond the burgers. You're always going to be a terrible burger chef instead of one of those things that you're amazing at. So maybe they saw something in OP that was like, hey, you're not going to be good at management. Your question about, conflict resolution and interpersonal relationships, they're not that strong. Here's another person. Now, that's just the devil's advocate part of the story, but yes, they hired a guy because of nepotism or whatever the word you want to use, where they didn't know anything about programming, so he was terrible at that. But who did you really punish over here? Like, the decoy defense would be, hey, that was messed up. You messed with somebody else's business. Yes, you wanted to get Darren and Michael fired, but the idea is, if I'm just the person that hired that firm and said, okay, cool, I'm doing drop shipping or something, and I'm selling a whole bunch of Funko Pops to people online. Cool, that's okay, but then once I hire this company and I'm losing tens of thousands of dollars in orders every single day that application doesn't work, yeah, there's this weird, computer engineer programming problem that they're resolving inside the company, but I'm losing money over there. So it's like, yes, OP, you're kind of screwing over some stranger because you're upset about the hiring practices of your company. Part about being an adult is, having face-to-face conversations or talking to HR or talking to somebody higher up, not saying, hey, I complained to my direct superior and he ignored it, so time to make some random company pay. Like, that's kind of messed up as well. But also the idea is, yes, they hired this guy, Darren, to become a computer programmer. Who knows what the title was? Like, senior tech lead manager at this big computer firm or whatever. If he just fabricated his application, oftentimes companies don't really want to leak information as to why they terminated somebody or how they terminated them, because it's just a whole liability thing. So now this guy Darren, for however many years on, he would say, hey, look, I was a senior lead programming tech manager over at this firm. Now they have that on their resume, it's on their taxes, so they can go get themselves another job from here to there and just keep on moving up, because regardless of their incompetence, they can kind of float this around. Like, how long did it take them to fire this guy Darren with it for his incompetence? And they didn't even fire him for his performance. They fired him because OP and his buddies sabotaged him. So they kind of, I don't know, they got their revenge. But now Darren and Michael have an amazing thing on their resume, and they can move anywhere around and just keep on hopping company to company. And nowadays, with the way businesses are, it's not like with our parents and our grandparents where, like, loyalty is what gets you up in the company. You can do all this stuff. You get a 10% disloyalty raise hopping from company to company just because there's what do they call them? Like HR headhunters, where they're just a separate company that does nothing but pulls top managers or just talent from other companies and plugs them into other companies and just gives them a pay bump. Like, that's just how you make it in corporate America right now. And the idea is, yes, they kind of got their revenge and they got this person fired, but it almost, in the grand scheme of things, like, yeah, they probably felt good about themselves getting that person fired in the moment, but no, Darren and Michael got good work experience on their job resume so they can move up, and the only person that really got hurt is probably that random client that had an application they purchased for in full and it messed up their business. I can only imagine if I was drop shipping something and how much it would mess up my business if even for a month it was just spewing out all sorts of bad information, just not matching up, accounts receivable with the address that goes on my shipping and everything. Like, that would just wreak havoc. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that everyone sucks here. Michael sucks because he hired the wrong person. Darren sucks because he's credit stealing, and OP and all his buddies suck because they just mess with some innocent person's business or whatever. But that's just my thoughts. Before we get to those top comments and the controversial comments, make sure you're leaving your comments down below in the short break. Maybe also subscribing it down below with the notifications on if you haven't already. But let's go ahead and get to the top comment right now, saying, oh man, he still didn't get the promotion? What a bummer. Even in stories like Revenge, I like the magical unicorn type endings, LMAO. And the next reply was, hey, he left for a better job. Who's to say he didn't get a promotion this way? Which is probably the thing, is like, you get that disloyalty bonus hopping company to company, and that's oftentimes what happens, and that's probably what happened to Darren, Michael, and OP right now. But let's go ahead and read the next top reply, saying, that's a great story. I usually skip the techie stories because they're way too detailed, involving coding and programming, and I know nothing about it. You gave just enough info to make it a great story without going in too much depth. Which I agree, because there's a couple other stories that I didn't cover that were very, very detailed in the programming aspect, and I was like, I'm not going to understand it. My viewers, maybe only 10% of them are going to understand it, so yeah, I just had to skip it. The next reply was, they didn't have a QA team? How did such a crappy code get deployed? And the next reply was, it was probably Darren's task to organize a testing team, which is probably true, and why it probably, you know, I would like to think that the programmers, knowing that their manager was so incompetent, they were able to develop a task where it's like, getting through the testing phase, it can pass all the regular checks and balances, but getting to actual real world applications outside of their, like, you know, network inside their intranet, it just fails on a massive scale. So I could see them being smart enough to outsmart Darren and making something pass, you know, internal checklist, but not actually once it gets out there in the real world. So I understand that, you know, some people might be able to poke that story in this whole poke this story with that hole and saying it's a fake story, throw it out. But maybe, you know, ProRevenge, Nuclear Revenge, all these other stories are going to be less fake story-like, because am I the antagonist? As you can kind of tell, I'm not distancing myself from it, but I'm trying to figure out other things to cover as well with that Decoy Court style, because am I the antagonist? As you can tell, I put all my stories out there, and they just, nobody ever, like, I'll make up stories about being Hermione Granger in a current time, so no one can figure out that that's a fake story. But, you know, let me know if you like this type of content, like me just being judgmental towards people online that I just have no business judging them. You know, make sure you subscribe down below with the notifications on, because typically within the first couple hours of video going up, I can interact with everybody. But if they're replying to comments from, you know, months later on, I usually don't see those things. But as always, if you made it this far in the video, I appreciate you hanging out with me while I'm on my little quarantine situation where I'm just at home figuring out what to do. Making 2 videos a day. Every day at 10 a.m. will usually be Am I the Antagonist? 3 p.m. will be something that's going to be Decoy Court related, just other random stuff. So if you like the content, make sure you share it with somebody, maybe the channel overall or this video in particular. But if nothing else, put this on autoplay and watch the next episode of DecoyNoise coming up next.